Louis Johnston Jr., founder of Layman Lessons, AmericanConstitutionCenter.org, PatriotPastors.net. Louis Johnston Jr. from the War Zone.
A wild-eyed homeless man taught me a lesson from God I could never have received otherwise. A very special blessing reserved for those who actually feed the hungry, as God commands all do who claim to serve Him. The term layman lessons are lessons for those doing God's work without being paid to do it. These are lessons from God first to me as a layman that I share with all who will receive these lessons from God through me. For 12 years, since 2001, I led our Layman Lessons church ministries to seat and serve and feed 150 homeless every Saturday morning. Brutal summer heat or brutal winter cold in an open parking lot in the war zone where they lived, providing a bus filled with free clothing and toiletries, a store for the homeless, a delicious hot banquet lunch, a sack lunch with bottled water to go, and over 1 million cups of cold water in Jesus' name. A full church service with singing. I preached, gave an altar call for spiritual counseling, and an opportunity to change their lives, to live God's way instead of their way. Now, we had stopped serving plates of food to the homeless seated at our tables, and many were leaving. We began to take down our tables after 3 hours on the 120-degree, hot, sun-baked asphalt parking lot. Sweat-drenched, exhausted, just ready to pack up and leave for cool, air-conditioned cars and homes and a cold shower to cool off. I was closing on stage and reminding our homeless guests to pick up their sack lunches and ice-cold bottled waters on their way out the gate. A wild-eyed homeless man staggered to the stage yelling loudly, "Help me, I need food," saying he was going to pass out. He hadn't eaten for days. Help me, I have to have something to eat and drink," just swaying as if he couldn't make another step without food. Well, I could see he was overly medicated and that he was a mess, physically and mentally. I nodded at a volunteer leader, Lois, and she told him to sit right down there at the table and we'll bring you a plate. When he stared at her blankly, she again pointed to the table and told him to sit down. Then he focused on her and barked, not to tell him what to do, but when I rebuked him, he immediately looked up at me and said, "I'm sorry," and sat down compliantly. We brought him a nice hot plate of food, and he stared at it, looked around the table and said incredulously, "Ain't you got no salt and pepper? I don't think I can eat this without salt and pepper." But he did, as we had already packed and loaded on the bus all our salt and pepper shakers. 90 or so of our tables, and 90%, I guess, were folded chairs were cleaned and packed away for travel. He was still eating. I told our volunteers, this homeless man example is why we have to set a time to quit serving food, or we would be there all day long. We even packed up his table, bringing him a 2-shelf unit that we use for the PA system, just the right height for him to use as a table. He sat and ate very slowly, enjoying every bite beyond anything I had ever seen before. We packed up the stage trailer, the buses. We held our celebration prayer of thanksgiving to God for our volunteer team before we leave, and still he sits eating slowly, barely able to eat. I admit, I'm ashamed to say, I was agitated, drained and hurting physically from being in the hot sun all morning. I was ready to leave. I even had his metal fork and chair taken. Hey, it was past time to leave. I was checked in my spirit immediately. and gave the fork back to him to keep. He staggered around the front of the bus, holding his food plate, looking for shade, and his pants suddenly fell down below his ankles. He didn't have legs. He had leg bones wrapped in skin. He wore a belt, but he just needed to take it up a notch to keep his pants up. I was shocked, shamed, convicted. I almost missed this opportunity. I repented for my attitude right there. I'm ashamed to say I was agitated at being delayed from my schedule. And there's no excuse for it. I'm ashamed to say I thought more of protecting ministry assets, specifically volunteers' time, a metal fork, and a good plastic reusable dinner plate, than a poor, wretched soul without a sound mind or hope in an indescribable physical condition. I'm ashamed to say I wanted to go home and sit in air-conditioned comfort more than I wanted to help this homeless man in great need. I'm ashamed to say I almost missed the whole point of being a Christian by wanting to leave this homeless man a sack lunch and send him on his way instead of sharing God's love. I'm ashamed to say I told my fellow volunteers our personal and ministry schedule is more important than caring for the needy. I'm ashamed to say most Christians and churches should be ashamed, but they say very loudly by word and deed daily their priorities are more important than God's commands and Jesus' commands to all Christians to feed the hungry, clothe the naked. I thank God so much for making me ashamed, for He truly opened the eyes of my heart to see the evidently invisible nation of homeless souls in a way only personal obedience, doing the work of feeding the hungry, can do.
Louis Johnston Jr. from the War Zone. Louis is the founder of Layman Lessons, which facilitated over 1 million meals to feed the homeless last year, all with an unpaid staff. He is NBA educated and author of over 10 books, published articles, and has crafted dozens of pieces of legislation. He founded AmericanConstitutionCenter.org, an online public library for Judeo-Christian heritage. PatriotPastors.net was launched for training Christian pastors and patriots. BlueWingUSA.com provides a bridge between business needs, solutions, marketing, and media strategies. Louis Johnston Jr. from the War Zone. LouisJohnston.com.